In 1993, three engineers sat inside a Denny's in San Jose, sketching out a company on napkins because they couldn't afford an office. Today, that company is worth more than $5 trillion. Let that sink in for a second. Nvidia alone is worth more than the entire economies of the UK, France, or India, more than most G20 nations combined into one number. A company that started by making graphics cards for video games is now worth more than most countries on Earth will ever produce in a year. So how does a chip maker end up bigger than entire nations? That's what we're breaking down today. Let's start with what Nvidia actually used to be, because for almost 2 decades, this wasn't an AI story at all. It was a gaming story. Nvidia built graphics processing units, GPUs, the chips that render explosions, shadows, and reflections in video games in real time. Good business, profitable business. But a video game chip company, no matter how good, doesn't get valued like a small country. Here's where it gets interesting. GPUs weren't just good at drawing pixels. It turns out the same math that renders a video game, thousands of small calculations happening at the exact same time, is also exactly the kind of math you need to train artificial intelligence. A regular computer processor, a CPU, does one task at a time, very fast, one after another, like a single incredibly efficient worker. A GPU does thousands of tasks at once, in parallel, like an entire warehouse of workers each handling a tiny piece of the job simultaneously. And training an AI model means doing millions, sometimes billions of tiny calculations at the exact same moment. Nobody designed GPUs for that purpose. It just happened to be the perfect tool sitting in the wrong aisle of the store. Nvidia noticed this early. Back in 2006, while the entire industry still saw GPUs as gaming hardware, Nvidia released something called CUDA, a software platform that let developers use Nvidia chips for general computing, not just graphics. At the time, almost nobody cared. There was no AI boom yet. There was no reason for this to matter. Except it turned out to be one of the most important bets in the history of technology. Fast forward to 2012, researchers used Nvidia GPUs to train a neural network that shattered records in an image recognition competition. That single moment changed how the entire AI field thought about hardware. Suddenly, every serious AI researcher on Earth needed GPUs, and thanks to CUDA, Nvidia's chips were already the easiest, most supported way to do it. By the time ChatGPT exploded into the public consciousness in late 2022, Nvidia wasn't just a chip company anymore. It was the chip company. The one every AI lab, every tech giant, and every government racing to build artificial intelligence had to go through. Jensen Huang, Nvidia's co-founder and CEO, had spent almost 20 years betting on a future that didn't exist yet. When it finally arrived, Nvidia was the only company standing there with the infrastructure already built and battle-tested. And the numbers show exactly how dramatic that shift became. In its most recent fiscal year, Nvidia pulled in over $215 billion in revenue, up 65% from the year before. Data center chips alone, the GPUs powering AI, generated nearly $194 billion of that. That's not a side business anymore. That's almost the entire company. Here's the part that should really surprise you. Nvidia's gross margins sit above 70%. For context, most hardware companies are thrilled with margins in the 20 to 30% range. Nvidia is essentially selling shovels during the biggest gold rush in modern history and pricing those shovels like luxury goods, because right now, nobody else can make a shovel this good. Which brings us to the real question. If GPUs are just chips, why can't someone else just build a competitor and undercut Nvidia on price? People have tried. AMD makes genuinely competitive chips. Google, Amazon, and Meta are all building their own custom AI processors specifically so they don't have to depend on Nvidia. And yet, Nvidia still controls somewhere around 80 to 90% of the entire AI chip market. The reason comes back to that software platform from 2006. Over nearly 20 years, an entire generation of AI researchers, engineers, and companies built their tools, their code, and their entire workflows on top of CUDA. Switching to a competitor's chip today doesn't just mean buying different hardware. It means rewriting software, retraining teams, and rebuilding infrastructure that took years to perfect. That kind of switching cost is brutal. It's the same reason people don't casually switch from iPhone to Android overnight. Except in this case, it's not a phone. It's the entire infrastructure of the AI industry. That software moat is arguably more valuable than the chips themselves. Anyone with enough money can eventually build a fast chip. Almost nobody can rebuild 20 years of ecosystem lock-in. Now, if you're liking this breakdown so far, do us a favor. Hit subscribe, drop a like, and comment which company you want us to break down next. It genuinely helps decide what we make. Let's talk about who's actually buying all of this, because that's what makes the $5 trillion number make sense. Nvidia's biggest customers aren't random startups. They're Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Meta, and OpenAI, companies with essentially unlimited capital, all racing each other to build the biggest AI infrastructure on the planet. When Microsoft wants to power the next version of ChatGPT, it needs tens of thousands of Nvidia GPUs. When Meta wants to train its next AI model, same story. These aren't companies negotiating hard on price. They're companies terrified of falling behind in the AI race, and Nvidia is sitting at the only toll booth every one of them has to pass. Nvidia has even started talking about AI factories, essentially entire data centers, small cities of computing power, built specifically to train and run AI models. And the company isn't just selling individual chips anymore, it's selling entire systems. Chips, high-speed networking to connect thousands of them together, and the software layer on top, all bundled into one package. That's a much harder thing to replace than a single processor, because ripping out one piece means ripping out the whole system. Some of these commitments are staggering in scale. Nvidia's pointed to deals involving millions of GPUs across announced AI infrastructure projects, including multi-gigawatt buildouts with companies like OpenAI and Anthropic. We're not talking about a warehouse of computers anymore. We're talking about power plant scale energy commitments just to keep these chips running. Of course, no $5 trillion story is completely risk-free, and it's worth being honest about that. Competition is real. AMD's chips have actually outperformed Nvidia's own early guidance, and companies like Google, Amazon, and Meta are getting increasingly serious about building their own custom silicon, specifically to reduce how dependent they are on Nvidia. Regulators are watching closely too, given how much of a single industry now runs through one company's hardware. There's also a bigger question hanging over the whole AI industry. Are companies spending hundreds of billions of dollars on AI infrastructure because the returns are actually there, or because nobody wants to be the one company that didn't build it in time? If AI spending ever slows down sharply, or if the returns on all this infrastructure don't show up the way investors expect, Nvidia is the company most directly exposed to that slowdown, since so much of its revenue now comes from this one extremely concentrated bet. But for now, the math is almost hard to comprehend. A company that started drawing better explosions in video games is now worth more than entire national economies, not because it makes flashy consumer products everyone recognizes, but because it quietly became the most essential infrastructure layer underneath the biggest technological shift of our generation. Most people have never held an Nvidia chip in their hands, never seen one, never will. And yet almost every AI tool they use every single day, the chatbot answering their questions, the app recommending their next video, the software drafting their emails, is quietly running on top of hardware this one company built. 3 guys with a napkin at Denny's running out of money ended up building the toll road that the entire AI industry has no choice but to drive on, and every single company racing to win the AI race has to pay the toll first. And maybe that's the real lesson buried in Nvidia's rise. The most valuable company in the world right now isn't the one making the product everyone talks about. It's the one quietly sitting underneath all of it, collecting a toll every single time. If this video helped you actually understand why Nvidia is worth what it's worth, do us a favor, subscribe, hit like, and comment below which company you want us to break down next. Your suggestions genuinely shape what we make.